Hi, and welcome to my channel. In case you guys haven't noticed, I have changed the days again of when I film versus when I post. So True Crime Tales is moving to Mondays. I think I had, Strange and Unusuals on Wednesdays, and then on Fridays is going to be Deadly Days. And this just kind of gives me a little bit more time, but also I can take like Saturday off or whatever and not have to worry about recording. But we're back. We're going to get on track. We're going to get on a schedule. We got this. And today, we're going to be talking about Scott Lee Kimball, who's really a con artist, but has a few murders under his belt. So, as always, there's a content warning. We get graphic. We talk about the creepy, the crawly, and the gross. We talk about the macabre and the disturbing. So, if you can't handle all of that, this is probably not the video for you, and you might like my makeup channel better. Scott Lee Kimball is a convicted serial killer, con man, and fraudster from Boulder County, Colorado, who murdered at least 4 people over a 2-year period. Investigators strongly suspect him in as many as 21 other unsolved killings. For the first year of his murder activity, he worked as an informant for the FBI, which both paid him and protected him from facing justice over some of his fraud schemes. Almost none of the information he gave the Bureau was of any use in prosecuting other crimes, and much of it later proved false. The case greatly embarrassed the Bureau. The agent who oversaw him during this period was disciplined. He insists he was not the only one responsible for enabling Kimball. Kimball was sexually abused in his teens, which led to a suicide attempt and a life of crime. He is a skilled forger who, while he ran a legitimate business buying and selling organic beef, primarily enriched himself by passing bad checks on the accounts of others and using forged documents. By 2003, he had faced criminal charges in 4 western states. These white-collar crimes also enabled his murders by allowing him to create evidence that his victims were still alive after he had killed them. He also used their checking accounts and credit cards to further his schemes once they were dead. 2 of Kimball's victims were people close to him, the daughter of his 3rd wife and his own uncle. His 2nd wife, who bore 2 sons, claimed he twice kidnapped and raped her, and there was an open arrest warrant for him from the 2nd assault, which occurred after he absconded from work release. At the time, the FBI hired him as an informant. Members of Kimball's family and some investigators believe that a 2004 motor vehicle accident, which severely injured his oldest son, was in fact an attempt to kill the boy for insurance money. Charges were never brought due to conflicts between jurisdictions where it could have been prosecuted. It really shouldn't have mattered. Just prosecute the guy. We could have saved ourselves all this trauma. You know? Prosecute him in both counties. I don't know. You probably can't do that because double jeopardy, but you know what I'm getting at. An investigation into a 2006 check fraud scheme eventually led law enforcement to discover the murders. Kimball, having violated the terms of his plea agreement when he could not lead police to the still missing body of one of the 4 victims, faced murder charges in all 4 cases, in addition to the fraud charges that had prompted the investigation. 3 of the missing murder victims had been found in remote areas of Colorado and neighboring Utah. Under Colorado laws, which quadruple sentences for those found to be habitual offenders, he was sentenced to a combined 70 years for the frauds and murders after pleading guilty. While in state prison, he additionally pleaded guilty to a charge of an attempted escape. He is currently serving his sentence in federal prison at the United States Penitentiary, Florence High in Colorado, a high-security facility immediately adjacent to ADX Florence. Kimball was born in Boulder, Colorado in 1966 when he was 10. His mother Barb came out as a lesbian, leading to his parents' divorce. His father Virgil left the state and remarried. Kimball was strongly affected by the divorce. In his early adolescence, he had his first encounter with law enforcement when police were called to the house after he fired a gun out the window at neighboring houses. Kimball and his younger brother Brett took refuge at their grandmother's mobile home. A neighbor of hers, Theodore Payton, took advantage of their situation and began sexually abusing both of them at a cabin he owned in Nederland, Colorado. Payton's abuse progressed from having Kimball touch him and photographing the boy naked to tying Kimball up and raping him, recording the episode on film. Payton threatened to kill his father, who lived in Montana, if he told anyone. Payton continued abusing Kimball when Kimball would return to Boulder on weekends after he had moved to Hamilton, Montana to attend high school and live with his father and brother. The abuse ended when Kimball was 23 and shot himself in the head in a suicide attempt. The bullet glanced off his skull, but the wound, which left a visible scar on his forehead, was severe enough that he was in critical condition for several days. A cousin, Ed Coet, remarked that Kimball came out of the experience changed, as if he had lost his conscience. I mean, he kind of... And then, all the bad stuff. Yeah, he kind of basically did. And that's not uncommon. Traumatic brain injury, like... If y'all know me, I watch like Law & Order SVU and Criminal Minds, and if you watch it, then you're going to know what I'm talking about. There was this episode where this principal was abusing a boy in her care at school, and it turned out that the only reason she was doing it was because she had a brain tumor, and they didn't find out until she hit her head and like started seizing in lockup. And so it's not uncommon or unheard of for like serious traumatic brain or head injuries to change the personality of someone. It's actually more common than we might think. So when I heard that, I really wasn't surprised, because I was like, well, yeah, that's a good reason, but it does not make what he did okay. Obviously, it's still a problem. It's still a crime. Those people did nothing to deserve death. But I understand how that could have altered his chemistry in his brain. Afterwards, Kimball and several other boys whom Peyton had molested reported him to Boulder police. Peyton was arrested, convicted of 7 counts of sexually assaulting a child, and imprisoned. Kimball continued to feel a deep sense of shame, like less of a man, for it, according to a former girlfriend. Kimball wrote a letter to the judge begging him to sentence Peyton additional prison time, stating, quote, "He has denied me my right to a normal, healthy, innocent childhood. He has damaged my life forever," end quote. When asked about the abuse and its effect on Kimball in 2010, Peyton said only, "That was a long time ago." Kimball had already turned to nonviolent crimes, especially fraud. At the age of 22, he was convicted of passing bad checks, his first felony in Montana. Back in Colorado, he burglarized houses. Montana also charged him with running an illegal hunting outfitting business. It was a lot of ing. After a brief first marriage failed, Kimball married Larissa Hintz in 1993 and moved with her to Spokane, Washington, where they had 2 sons before divorcing in 1997. She recalls that process servers were frequent visitors to their house, as Kimball was running scams in the logging industry, and those who partnered with him and were cheated would often use legal means to recover their money. He always had an excuse, Hintz recalls. "It was never his fault," end quote. Among those Kimball victimized in his schemes were her dentist and the bishops at her church. Their relationship continued for another 2 years after the divorce, ending when Hintz accused him of rape. Kimball told the police she was trying to secure full custody of their sons, and after she failed a lie detector test, no charges were filed. Prosecutors also saw the case as complicated, since the couple had continued to have consensual sex after the incident. It's not unheard of. Sometimes there's the trauma bonding, and you just do it because it's better for you to not fight. So I understand like where they're coming from, but I also kind of understand the other side of that. It's not uncommon, it's sad, but sometimes people really believe that it's easier to give up rather than to fight. The following year in 2000, Kimball's violation of probation for an earlier fraud conviction revoked his earlier suspended sentence and put him back in prison in Montana. A year later, he absconded from a halfway house and stole a truck, along with a till from his employer, a gas station where he was on work release. Hintz reported that shortly afterward, he returned to Spokane, where he broke into her house, kidnapped her, and raped her again. She filed charges, and an arrest warrant was issued. Kimball fled to Alaska, where he posed as his brother, got engaged to another woman, and resumed his career in check fraud, writing $25,000 in forged checks. He was again arrested and convicted. In federal prison, he convinced FBI agents that he would work for them as an informant and was never brought to trial on the Spokane charges. The FBI denies this resulted from any intervention on its part. The agent who handled Kimball in Alaska says he never knew about those charges. Kimball told the FBI that a fellow inmate, Arnold Flowers, was planning to have the federal judge and prosecutor in his case killed, along with the witness who had testified in the fraud case against him. With his help and that of an undercover agent, the Bureau recorded Flowers and his girlfriend making the arrangements with persons whom they believed to be the killers. They were arrested on several felony charges in March of 2002. Kimball told the FBI he could help them with more cases. Another fellow inmate he said had boasted of having killed another federal prosecutor, Thomas Wales, in his Seattle area home the year before. For his safety, Kimball was transferred to the low-security Inglewood Federal Prison in Littleton, Colorado. He discreetly let it be known that he had information about planned crimes that FBI agents might want to know about, and soon the Bureau's liaison to the prison, Carl Schlaff, came to visit him. Kimball told Schlaff that fellow convict Steve Ennis, whom he had befriended, was allegedly plotting to kill witnesses expected to testify in an important trial about Ennis's ecstasy distribution ring. Schlaff had resented being assigned to Inglewood after earlier working on organized crime investigations. He considered the work more suited to a less experienced agent. In Kimball, he saw the possibility of breaking the kind of case that could put him on the career path he had been hoping for. He viewed Kimball as someone who, while he had an answer for everything, was not a violent man and could still earn the trust of a jury as a witness. Due to Kimball's earlier service as an informant, there was still nothing in his file about the rape and kidnapping charges. In March 2003, shortly after Jennifer Markham, the first of 4 people Kimball later admitted to killing, disappeared, he pleaded guilty in a Colorado federal court to the Alaska fraud charges. The prosecution and defense agreed that the records would be sealed to protect Kimball's work as an informant, an agreement signed off on by John Suthers, the U.S. Attorney for Colorado. The following day, the FBI flew him to Seattle for a monitored conversation with the man he had identified to Schlaff as Wales' killer. However, the conversation yielded no useful information, as Kimball did not say what the FBI had wanted him to do, and it seemed as if the man barely knew him. Afterwards, Kimball failed a lie detector test in which he was asked if the man had confessed the whale's killing to him. Federal prosecutors later told Schlaff they were putting the Ennis case on hold. When Schlaff drove Kimball to the airport the following month for a flight to Alaska to consult with prosecutors on the Flowers case, he noticed Kimball seemed less relaxed than usual. When Schlaff later checked Kimball's online file at the FBI office, he saw a new warrant from Spokane that did not specify a charge. Angry at not just Kimball, but the prosecutors in the Ennis case and the Seattle agents who had doubted Kimball's reliability, Schlaff decided to end Kimball's service as an informant. Schlaff had Denver police arrest Kimball upon his return from Alaska. The Spokane charge turned out to be a minor violation of his probation. They're related to his reporting of his address. Just after Schlaff told him he would no longer be an informant, Kimball told him he had information in the Jennifer Markham disappearance, which he later explained was evidence that Ennis's partner had killed Markham and told him about it in detail. A DEA investigator on the case was not sure Kimball was telling the truth, but he passed a lie detector test this time. At Kimball's sentencing in December, prosecutors told the judge that he might yet be able to help the Bureau solve that case and asked for the lightest sentence possible. Kimball was fined $5,000 and ordered to pay almost $8,300 in restitution for the Wells Fargo bank branch in Cordova, Alaska. Judge Marcia Krieger sentenced him to 3 months in prison, which was more than accounted for by the time Kimball served. He was also put on probation for 3 years, ending his formal service as an FBI informant, although he could still work with the Bureau voluntarily. Following his 2002 release on $10,000 bond, Kimball moved in with his mother, Barb, and her partner near Denver, Colorado. He began to make money by flipping houses and set up an organic beef distribution company with $65,000 from his mother and brother. This enterprise required him to frequently travel around the state to ranches and cattle auctions in order to buy product. His ex-wife had also returned to Colorado. She still feared him, but she let him see his sons. The FBI also paid him the first installment in a total of $50,000 and gave him a cell phone with an earpiece for recording. I'm going to take a quick break and get a drink. I will be right back. Okay, and we're back. Over the next 2 years, Kimball killed at least 4 people that he has confessed to. 3 of them occurred while he was officially an FBI informant. 2 of them were the girlfriends of Inglewood inmates whom he befriended after his release. Another was his stepdaughter. The sole male victim was his uncle. He allegedly attempted to kill his son, but no charges were filed in the incident due to arguments over jurisdiction. The body of a second victim, Jennifer Markham, has not been found. At one of their early meetings, Kimball told Schlaff that Steve Hawley, another inmate he knew at Inglewood serving time for bank robbery, who had a history of escaping, was planning another attempt. Schlaff notified the prison, which put the man in solitary confinement. Kimball had actually initiated the plan, under which he would, once free, drive his truck to the prison wall, have others create a diversion, throw a ladder over the wall, which Holly would climb, and then the two would drive to Mexico. As part of the plan, Holly directed Kimball to make contact with his girlfriend, Leanne Emery, after his release. Likewise, he told Emery to do as Kimball told her to. An Idaho native who had grown up in Colorado after her parents moved there. Emery, 24, had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder in her teens. She, too, worked as a stripper and had briefly been married to a Texas man who was incarcerated at the time, which led to her growing involvement with people involved in drugs and other crimes. Kimball reached out to her near the end of 2002. Around the same time, he was also meeting with Markham and began involving her in scams involving the theft of credit card-related checks from mail thrown away by local post offices. Unable to confide in Holly since he had been put in solitary, she clung more and more to Kimball, whom she admitted in an email to a cousin was, quote, dangerous. But if you don't fuck with him, he's your best friend, end quote. A week after writing that, on January 16, 2003, Emery returned to her parents' home in Centennial, Colorado, and packed her car for what she said was a trip to Mexico to go caving, a hobby of hers. Shortly after she left, Emery phoned her sister to say that just in case anything happened to her, to remember that she loved her. Instead of going to Mexico, she and Kimball spent the next week traveling through 4 different western states, stealing checks worth a total of $15,000. They regularly charged their gas on her credit card. She also used it to buy a Toshiba laptop at Best Buy. On January 27th, Emery called her parents to tell them that she was staying in Mexico a little longer, but she was actually back in Colorado by then. That was the last time they heard from her. Emery had apparently been in the Denver area as she bought and mailed a gift certificate to her sister from there that same day. That night, she checked into a hotel in Grand Junction, Colorado. A clerk recognized her from a photo, but said later that her hair, long and blonde in the photo, had been cut short and dyed a dark brown. From the hotel, she called a cousin. They talked for 2 hours, during which Emery said that if Kimball, for whom she used the alias Hannibal, interesting nickname choice, learned of the conversation, he would kill both of them, although otherwise she was pretty safe. She could not say where she was, but claimed to be with some corrupt police officers. Emery ended the call with a reminder similar to the one she had left her sister, that if anything happened to her, to remember she loved her. 2 days later, January 29th, she checked out of the hotel. According to Kimball's later account, he drove with her into Bryson Canyon and Utah's Book Cliffs. Near the end of the road, Kimball asked her to go hiking with him. They went up a wash into a dead-end box canyon, then up a cliff face. Emery told him his face just changed. Then he told her to kneel on the rocks. Then he shot her in the head with a handgun she had bought a few days earlier during their crime spree. The day afterwards, her abandoned car was found near the nearby town of Moab, Utah, 40 miles from Grand Junction. Her parents did not know anything was amiss until Holly wrote them 2 weeks later, worried that he had not heard from Leanne in some time. Howard Emery, Leanne's father, wrote back that he and his wife had not heard from her either and began investigating. Holly told them of an FBI agent who had been in contact with Leanne, but when Howard called the man, he said Holly was lying. Police were reluctant to investigate the case both because Leanne was an adult who could make her own decisions, and Howard says her background. The Emerys tracked their daughter through her credit card records, learning that she had, in fact, never gone to Mexico. The cousin she had talked with before disappearing shared Leanne's emails, in which she repeatedly expressed fear of Kimball. Holly would not identify Kimball when asked, likewise warning Howard that if he did, that would put the entire Emery family's lives at risk. When some gas purchases on Leanne's credit card made in California surfaced from the days after she had left Grand Junction, Howard regained hope that she was still alive. But when he saw copies of the actual receipts, he realized they were not her signature. But police still showed little interest in taking the case. Her remains were found in March 2009 near the Colorado-Utah border in a remote area. At another early morning meeting, Kimball told Schlaff that he had told Ennis that he would personally kill the witnesses against Ennis after his impending release. The next step, Kimball said, was for Ennis's girlfriend, Jennifer Markham, to introduce him to Ennis's partner once he was out of prison. The partner would then give him the gun to kill the witnesses. Within 2 weeks of his release from Inglewood, Kimball made contact with Markham, a 25-year-old high school dropout who had moved to the Denver area with her young son from Illinois. At that time, she was dancing at a strip club and living with her son's father in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Kimball told her he owned some coffee shops in Seattle and that she should move there and manage one of them for him. Schlaff would not let Kimball have sex with Markham when he asked, due to the complications it might cause should either of them eventually have to testify in court against Ennis or anyone else involved. When Markham told Ennis about Kimball, he suggested she take him up on his coffee shop offer and move to Seattle. It was the last time he or anyone other than Kimball ever heard from her. At a diner recorded by the FBI, while Markham did call one of the witnesses against Ennis a, quote, scumbag who deserved to die, end quote, the conversation went no further in that direction. Kimball told Schlaff around the same time that shortly after dinner, she had called and told him he was flying to New York for a while, where Ennis had also been involved in a drug distribution and she had also worked as a stripper. He claimed she had spent $6,000 to buy a revolver to kill Ennis's partner while she was there. Shortly after their dinner, however, Markham moved all her belongings to Kimball's home in preparation for the move to Seattle. Schlaff later found out that both Markham and Kimball's cell phone, normally very busy, showed no activity at all the next day. Kimball did not resume using his for another 3 days, and Markham never did. Parking records of Denver International Airport showed that Markham's green 1996 Saturn had been left there early on February 18th. At the end of March, it was considered abandoned and towed for unpaid fees. 2 letters to her Colorado Springs address seeking payment went unanswered. Her son's father said she had not visited or made contact since she had moved out. 2 months later, Schlaff was driving Kimball to a meeting with Ennis's drug partner, Jason Price, at a local chain restaurant. The agent asked if he had heard any news about Markham's whereabouts. Kimball said she had heard she was dead. This surprised Schlaff, as well he was aware that Markham associated with drug dealers and assuming some risks by doing so, he did not think getting killed would have been one of them. Kimball could not provide any further details when Schlaff asked. Schlaff recalled that he had been unable to reach Kimball the weekend Markham disappeared. All of Markham's furniture was also at Kimball's house, but he explained that by showing the agent a lease agreement, apparently signed by Markham, allowing him to use her furniture for a year in exchange for $400. Later that month, following Kimball's arrest at the airport upon his return from Alaska, Schlaff went to Kimball's jail cell to inform him that the FBI was done with him as an informant. But then Kimball told him that Price had confessed to him that he had killed Markham. Price, he said, had shown him a photograph of her body bound and gagged before he put her in his trunk and drove to Rifle, Colorado, where he dumped it in a creek. Kimball added that Price asked him to go to the body and remove her breast implants since she feared those could be used to identify her, which, yes, they can. So they have like a VIN number, basically. That's what I'm going to call it. So like your car has an identification number, so do any kind of implants, whether it be breast implants, butt implants, collagen, a joint replacement. Like I have a whole titanium hip. You know, there's something in there that's identifiable that will be traced back to you, and it is different for every person who has one. So yeah, that is actually possible. Schlaff questioned him along with Suzanne Hallinan, the Federal Drug Enforcement Administration agent who was still working the Ennis case. She doubted the story since she did not think Price was capable of killing anyone. Additionally, she told her FBI colleague that she believed Kimball killed Markham, but when challenged by Schlaff, she could not think of what his motive might be, and he passed a lie detector test on the question. Markham's parents, who had divorced shortly after her birth, grew concerned when months went by without her returning their phone calls. They allowed for the possibility that she had either dropped out of touch or simply did not want to talk to them, which were both possibilities given her history, and the police did not give the case much priority. But in 2004, Markham's parents learned her abandoned car had been found the year before, which raised their suspicions. Kimball continued to claim he had last seen her on her way to the airport, but there was no record of her having made any plans or boarding any plane. They paid to have a billboard with Jennifer's picture and a tip hotline erected about the strip club where she worked, offering a $20,000 reward. In 2004, Markham's father, Bob, had a friend in a local police department query to a federal database for information on her. The search alerted Schlaff, who called Bob Markham. The FBI agent told him that he had been seen since renting her furniture to a man, but disclosed no other details, not even Kimball's name. Eventually, he gave Bob Markham Kimball's cell number and told him to ask for Joe Snitch. Markham and his ex-wife went to Colorado to meet Kimball. After a genial meeting and lunch at a Broomfield restaurant, his demeanor became unsettling. Kimball told Bob the same story he had told Schlaff about how Ennis had killed her, showed him the pictures, and then asked him to remove her breast implants, and in this version, her IUD. and said that he could take Bob to where her body was the next day if he wanted. That night, Kimball showed up at Jennifer Markham's mother's hotel in Lakewood and told her that if she signed a contract allowing him to tie her up and have sex with her, he would show her what the killer did to her daughter. She declined, fearing Kimball would kill her too. Both she and Bob Markham now had no doubt he had killed Jennifer. Earlier in January 2003, Lori McLeod had met Kimball at a poker table in the Lodge Casino in Black Hawk, Colorado, west of Denver. She had been impressed by how he wheeled his mother's suffering from multiple sclerosis up to the table and found him likable. When they got to know each other better after McLeod slipped him her phone number, he told her he was an FBI agent and showed her a badge, faked, and laptop with the bureau seal on it. On Valentine's Day of that year, they dated for the first time just before Jennifer Markham disappeared. McLeod accepted Kimball's excuse that he could tell her where he was going sometimes because of the secrecy requirements of his work with the FBI. The most he said he could tell her was that it involved the possible murder of a young woman named Jennifer. Casey was Lori's 19-year-old daughter from one of her 2 previous marriages, who had run away from home on several occasions, had been charged with credit card fraud, and was recovering from methamphetamine addiction. At the time her mother met Kimball, Casey's life seemed to be improving. She had been clean, again living with Lori, making new friends, and had taken a part-time job at a Subway nearby. Kimball explained his June 2003 arrest to a shaken McLeod as a ruse to burnish his FBI cover. Since he had been released relatively quickly without any apparent charges, she believed him. In August, he went on what he told Lori was a hunting trip. While Kimball was away, Casey disappeared. After she missed one of her shifts at Subway, Lori was unable to reach her on her cell phone. The police declined to take a missing persons report as, according to Lori, they said Casey was an adult who could disappear if she wanted to, as long as she did not break the law. When Kimball returned a few days afterwards, he echoed that argument while consoling Lori, telling her Casey would eventually come back home. He also promised her that he would see what help his FBI connections could give them in finding Casey. Kimball planted evidence to suggest that Casey was still alive. He supposedly found one of her gold necklaces dangling from her doorknob one day, and a makeup kit had also disappeared from her room. Furthermore, the owner of the property he and Lori rented in Adams County that summer claimed that Casey and her boyfriend had been seen driving by. Lori continued searching for Casey. She found her daughter's boyfriend, who told her that he had last seen Casey being picked up by Kimball for work from the motel they had been staying at, which he also paid for the night she missed her shift. McLeod began to wonder if Kimball knew where Casey was and could possibly be in touch with her. Shortly afterwards, Kimball proposed that he and McLeod get married. It would help her move on from Casey's disappearance and also might help them find her. Kimball and McLeod returned to the Denver. After they exchanged vows at a drive-through wedding chapel in Las Vegas, Kimball and McLeod returned to the Denver area, where Kimball's mother helped them take out life insurance policies. McLeod named Kimball as the sole beneficiary. In September, they went on a honeymoon camping trip in Kremlin, Colorado area, not far from where Casey's remains would be found several years later. The marriage was under considerable strain its first year. Kimball was absent even more than he had been before the wedding, and when he was home, he was sometimes emotionally abusive. A particular target was his older son, Justin, who had a very gentle personality. Kimball considered this feminine and often called the boy Susie to highlight his disapproval. One evening in July 2004, Kimball and the boys were out in the backyard digging holes. Cody, the younger one, ran in to tell McLeod to call 911 as Justin had been hurt, possibly with a broken leg. Kimball came in, carrying his son in his arms, and said something about his back. McLeod, by then, on the phone, told the dispatcher there was a possible injury, but before she could complete the call, Kimball put Justin in his car and drove away. Accordingly, she told the dispatcher not to send an ambulance as she presumed her husband was taking Justin to the nearest hospital. When Lori McLeod and Cody reached the hospital, Justin was on a gurney, suffering convulsions and nausea with blood all around him. The nurse said that the fall had caused serious injury. McLeod said he had not been injured at her house and was not aware he had fallen in any way. The nurse explained that when he was brought in, his father said the boy had fallen out of the car. Kimball came in and said that Justin had also been hit in the head by a metal grate. On the way there, Kimball said Justin meant to open the car window, but opened the door instead and fell from the car at 60 miles per hour. Kimball did not believe Justin would survive. When she heard about the incident, Barb Kimball went back to her insurance office and changed the beneficiary of the licensed insurance policy on Justin from Scott to herself. She later told one of her employees that she did so because she feared Scott had attempted to kill his son for the insurance money. He had, Barb said, asked her a few weeks earlier who the beneficiary was. After 2 weeks in an induced coma, Justin survived. His first words once he could speak again were, "Why did Dad do this to me?" He recalled his father dropping the grate on him and then pushing him from the car. The neurosurgeon treating him said it was possible the injuries had affected his memory. Law enforcement investigated, but since the two injuries had occurred in different jurisdictions, it was unclear which agency should take the lead, and no charges were filed to the consultation of Justin's mother. I do think that's ridiculous. This boy is telling you that his dad just tried to murder him, and you're like, don't get to do anything about it because we can't decide who gets to peacock about it. It shouldn't matter. Kimball's uncle, Terry Kimball, came from his home in Alabama, along with his 2 dogs, to assist in Cody's care while Justin was hospitalized. Among the possessions he had brought along was a briefcase with thousands of dollars in cash that he had withdrawn from a savings account after an earlier divorce. He slept in Casey's room and began talking to Scott about getting into business with him at Faith Farms, another business Scott had started the year before. McLeod did not have to deal with Terry for long. One day she came home from work and found that the furniture had been rearranged. Scott had taken a white leather couch with a visible stain outside. When McLeod asked what that stain was, he said that one of his uncle's dogs had vomited on it. She did not think the stain was dog vomit and told her husband so. He suggested that perhaps Terry had vomited on himself and blamed the dogs, but in any event it did not matter since Terry won some money in the Ohio State Lottery, met a stripper, and decided to move to Mexico. Shortly thereafter, Karen Johnson, upset at not having heard from her husband, filed for divorce in the hope that that would provoke him to respond to her. She called the Kimball home around Labor Day weekend to see where he was. Lori told her what Scott had told her about Terry running off to Mexico. The divorce papers sent to Kimball's home were returned and the divorce finalized the following year. A year after Terry Kimball disappeared, his brother Virgil, Scott's father, received a letter from the address with the email ID Terry Kimball. Terry said he was enjoying himself in Mexico and was unlikely to return. There was no further contact with him. In 2009, his mummified body was discovered in a remote mountain pass near Vail, Colorado. Hold on. I skipped a page. Carrie Thatcher went to talk to Lori McLeod, who agreed to come to the police station for an interview from there. She called her husband on speakerphone so Thatcher could listen, claiming she was at home in the bathroom. Kimball asked her to get some of his work mail, and the call ended. After the conversation, Thatcher asked what Kimball did for a living. McLeod told him he worked for the FBI. Thatcher suspected Kimball might be impersonating an agent as part of his sophisticated scams. McLeod also told Thatcher about Casey's disappearance and her growing suspicion that Kimball was responsible. Further investigation after the interview led Thatcher to talk to detectives in Louisville, Colorado. Louisville. In Kentucky, they call it Louisville. Louisville, Colorado, about the incident with Justin. In March, he called the FBI to alert them about Kimball's possible impersonation. He was connected to Schlaff, who sarcastically expressed surprise at news that his former informant might be involved in more check-related criminal activity. After Thatcher informed Schlaff about Casey McLeod also going missing shortly after last being seen in Kimball's presence, the two realized that in addition to being a con artist and forger, Kimball might also be a serial killer. Thatcher and another FBI agent, Johnny Krusing, met to build a case against Kimball. They were preparing an arrest warrant for his money probation violations when they talked to Brett Kimball, who told them that his brother had given him some guns, which would have been illegal for him to possess. This was an additional charge, and the FBI immediately put the warrant out. McLeod also told Thatcher about Casey's disappearance and her growing suspicions that Kimball... Why is this in here twice? From Laurie McLeod, Grusing and Thatcher got Kimball's new cell phone number. The FBI traced it to a neighborhood in Riverside, California, where he had been living with the girlfriend McLeod suspected he had there, and alerted the local police that they would be attempting to make the arrest. Kimball left in his pickup truck at mid-afternoon, March 14th, followed by federal marshals and an unmarked cop car. A car chase soon ensued. He called his girlfriend, who pleaded with him to turn himself in. He demurred, telling her he knew things the police would kill to keep him from telling. He led them south from Riverside, down the Coachella Valley, towards the Salton Sea, finally pulling off the main roads near the small farming town of Mecca, where he ran out of gas in a field 260 miles from where the chase began. After briefly threatening suicide during a phone call with Schlaff, he eventually surrendered 3 hours after first fleeing. Kimball was taken back to Colorado briefly for arraignment on charges there, then back to Montana to serve time for his absconding from the halfway house several years earlier. He was also sentenced to an additional 2 years in prison. In May, he was briefly taken back to Colorado, where he pleaded guilty to the weapons charge that had led to his arrest, saying he wanted to break the cycle I'm in. He received 10 months in prison, followed by 6 months in another halfway house to be served when his Montana sentence was concluded. Hence, Kimball's second wife repeated her rape allegations to Thatcher and Grusing, and added that she suspected him of having at one time trying to poison her. A former Montana cellmate of Kimball's, who after release worked for his meat business, recalled how one night while the two were drinking, Kimball, unprompted, asked him if fake titties were traceable. Upon being told that they were, Kimball seemed visibly upset and later asked the man if he would, as a favor for a friend, take something from a body. The man refused, and the detectives were struck by the similarity to what Kimball had claimed Ennis told him. With proof that at least one of the missing people last known to have been seen in Kimball's company was in fact dead, Grusing and Thatcher had some leverage with him. The prosecutors had determined that his more recent forgeries and habitual offender status was taken into account. They told Kimball that if he pled guilty to those charges and revealed the locations of the other 3 bodies, he would face only 1 count of second-degree murder, the sentence to run concurrently with the time for the fraud charges. If he declined, he would face separate charges for all the murders, which made the death penalty a possibility. Kimball accepted the deal. After he signed, he told all present to prepare for a trip to Utah, where he showed them Leanne Emery's body outside Moab. On the way back towards Denver, he revealed where he had buried his uncle Terry in Vail Pass. But he was less certain of where Jennifer Markham's body lay. After several locations he identified turned up empty, he concluded that he had forgotten where he had put her. Investigators were doubtful, believing he was holding the location back for future negotiations. Since only 2 of the 3 remaining bodies had been found, there was no deal. Kimball caused some disruption prior to his October 2009 sentencing, when through his lawyer, he circulated what appeared to be official FBI summaries of interviews with some of the other people he had been associated with. They suggested that Ennis had gotten immunity for telling the FBI he and Kimball ran a rape porn business, and that Markham, McLeod, and Emery had been killed at the behest of drug dealers in prison at Inglewood, whose business they had cut into by smuggling drugs into the prison on visits. The FBI strongly suspects Kimball in 2 other murders. In September 2000, it was reported that the Bureau was investigating him as a possible suspect in the murder and mutilation of Katrina Powell, a young victim who lived in a troubled life similar to those of Kimball's other female victims. She was found in Westminster in October 2004 while he lived in the area under FBI supervision. 3 months later, Kimball told a cousin that he had been proposed as a suspect in the West Mesa murders in New Mexico, which were committed during the same period that he was living in the Denver area. He denied involvement. Laurie McLeod had her marriage to Kimball annulled in 2008. At his sentencing, she said that she felt Casey had forgiven him, and thus she was also willing to forgive him. Kimball has since remarried to a woman incarcerated in a Kansas prison for child abuse. Couldn't be a better match made in heaven. They have never physically met. Theodore Payton, whose sexual abuse of the teenage Kimball led to the suicide attempt that scarred his forehead and, according to Coed, permanently changed him for the worse, died in January 2017. His body was found outside his Nederland cabin. The cause was found to be heart disease with other chronic conditions listed as contributing factors. He served 5 years of a 7-year sentence after Kimball and his other victims came forward, but escaped being required to register as a sex offender until the late 2000s. Early in 2011, Kimball reportedly wrote a lengthy handwritten letter to his family describing in greater detail the deaths of all 4 of his victims. His accounts were slightly different from those he had previously given. The FBI also received a copy. Kimball took responsibility for Emery's death, which he had previously attributed to someone else, saying he had shot her twice when she tried to escape. Coet, who discussed the content of the letter with the media, was encouraged by the letters, noting that although his cousin might not be telling the whole truth, he had admitted to a greater role in the killings than previously. He was so desperately needs mental health care. Coet told Westward. Coet believed Kimball had had some sort of religious awakening and was seeking redemption. In a 2021 interview with The Atavist, Kimball offered 2 more different explanations for the Markham, McLeod, and Emery killings. At first, he said the 3 women were all blackmailing him or threatening to expose his criminal schemes to the FBI. Later, he claimed the murders were done for a biker gang. His uncle, he said, was a child molester. None of the claims could be corroborated. That same year, it was reported that Kimball had been moved out of the Colorado prison system. The state's Department of Corrections confirmed that he was transferred out of state, but did not say where. Kimball's name no longer returns any results when searched on the department's website. A search of the Federal Bureau of Prisons website found that he had been moved to the United States Penitentiary Coleman in Central Florida. No reason has been given for the move. As of July 2023, he has been moved back to Colorado at the United States Penitentiary Florentine. And that is the sad and disturbing and absolutely insane case of Scott Kimball. He got away with so much for so long, and all because the FBI thought he was an informant. And he was informing on himself. They just didn't know that. So yeah, it's really sad. There was just so much that pissed me off about this case because they could have done so much more, and they were just like, you know what, yeah, let him just get away with it because we kind of need him to tell us stuff, but he's not even telling us the truth. You know what I mean? Anyway, always drop your comments. Let me know how this video was. Let me know if you have someone you want a story on. And I'll see you guys next week. Bye.